Morning. My name's Jeanmarie. I want to start by thanking Lifebulb for asking me to share my transplant story today. It has been quite the roller coaster. Over the past several years, I have become passionate about helping and advocating for patients to help them navigate this complex journey, which goes far beyond surgery. Our lives are forever changed by navigating through medication side effects, medical insurance, mental health struggles, and our chronic illness, and the usual everyday normal issues people face, plus trying to live the best second chance at life. My journey started in 1995. I was an average, happy child born and raised in San Diego. I spent a lot of time outdoors with my younger sisters, playing at the beach and hiking. I had a wonderful childhood. My high school experience started like any other teenager. I had lots of friends, excelled in AP honor courses, and I was on the school swim team. One day I began to have back pain. Initially, my parents thought it was because I was an active teenager. The back pain progressed. Soon, I began to have extreme fatigue, headaches, and then it was challenging to even get out of bed or keep my eyes open. My mom finally took me to the doctor since I was not getting better. My symptoms were initially very puzzling to our family doctor. He ran several blood tests. The blood tests came back showing that I was extremely anemic and my kidneys were only functioning at about 30%. I was then referred to a pediatric nephrologist. At this point, I still could not grasp the severity of the situation. I could tell my parents were in distress. Being 16, I was primarily concerned with hanging out with my friends and planning my future. The pediatric nephrologist ordered a renal biopsy. That is when I was diagnosed with lupus nephritis. Keep in mind that it was 1996. The internet wasn't a place to find information yet. The only information you could get was from the doctors. In 1996, there still wasn't a ton of information about lupus nephritis anywhere. That is when my entire life changed. Shortly after my diagnosis, I was ushered off to an adult nephrologist. We couldn't look up doctor ratings on the internet in 1996. I took this next step extremely seriously. My parents and I decided to make appointments with the doctors that my insurance recommended at the time. At the appointments, I interviewed each doctor. I needed to make sure we were on the same page with my health goals. I wanted the most normal life I possibly could have. Out of 4 doctors I interviewed, I found one kindred spirit. He has been my nephrologist for the last 27 years. I continued to have a normal high school experience. I still felt isolated from friends who did not go to frequent doctor or lab visits. I pushed through. I tried to stay positive and focused on academics since sports were too hard on my body. I still felt uncertain if I was going to have a future to look forward to. I started to come to terms with death. I did not know anyone who was going through the same thing I was. It made everything feel so scary and isolating. I pushed through trying to have a normal college experience. I was 22 in 2004 when I was listed on the national waiting list for a kidney. My condition continued to worsen. I tried to ignore it as I was determined to live a life while I still could. My entire family started the living donor process. Neither of my sisters and my mom was qualified. My dad was a perfect match, but he still had to lose some weight, lower his blood pressure. While he was working on that, I continued to get worse. I weighed 90 pounds and my GFR was 6, but I refused to start dialysis. I just couldn't do it. I continued to work full time until the day before my surgery. My whole life had been about quality and not quantity. I did get cold feet right before surgery as I was being rolled from the ICU to the surgery room, but my transplant surgeon told me it was too late. They already took my dad's kidney out. The anesthesiologist put some headphones on me, and the next thing I remember, I was waking up in the ICU. I was told prior to the surgery that I would wake up and jump right out of bed. I, in fact, did not. My body was not happy with the medications. The ICU was loud and I could not rest. The physical therapist had a hard time trying to get me out of bed, but I continued to push myself. 2 days later, I graduated to the regular recovery floor. One of my favorite memories of my whole life was after I finally got some sleep away from the ICU, I woke up and my boyfriend at the time was reading a book sitting next to me. As soon as I opened my eyes, I said, I did it. I made it. I recovered quickly after the first hurdle. It took about 4 weeks for my body to adjust to all the medications. After 6 weeks, I returned to work full time. Although I began to live my second chance at life to the fullest, it did not come without struggles. My first harsh lesson was about year 2. I tried to maintain a normal life, got married, and tried to do what most women strive to do, have a family. My transplant team wasn't all on board with my choice. I tried to research on my own and made the decision to try anyway. However, I suffered a miscarriage at 4 months. Several months later, I started to experience extreme fatigue and a general feeling of not feeling well. I did not have any fevers. My labs came back normal. I still felt something was wrong. I insisted on more labs. They kept coming back fine. I then insisted on a kidney biopsy. My transplant team was hesitant. However, the results came back that I had acute cellular rejection. My transplant team went quickly into action. I was in the hospital for quite some time, receiving plasmapheresis, IVIG treatments, and IV steroids. We all thought for sure I would lose my kidney. After weeks and weeks, my kidney came back. Not everything could make it through that health scare. My job, which I had been dedicated to for years and years, was not thrilled with me needing so much time off. I started fresh at a new company, and shortly after, my relationship struggled and the stress took its toll, and I went through a divorce. So many changes in a short amount of time. I was starting all over again. It was difficult to keep going, staying positive, and taking care of myself. I was devastated and blamed my transplant on all my difficulties. I struggled to find my purpose. I had an eat, pray, love moment, and I went to a Buddhist temple, which was in my neighborhood. I attended months of meditation classes. I was speaking to one of the teachers one day, and he said I needed to stop living in a bubble. No excuses. I could not use my illness as an excuse to not live. That is the day I promised myself to really live. I started traveling to the Grand Canyon, Sedona, the Redwoods, Big Sur, Oregon, Washington State, New York, Texas, and Florida. Anywhere I could go, I found peace in road trips and meeting new people. As I began to find peace with having a very different life than most people, my nieces and nephews started popping up in my life. I have 6 amazing nieces and nephews. I find so much joy in spending so much time with them, watching them all grow up to be amazing humans. I am so proud of them every single day. I am in awe of how smart and kind each of them is. After my first rejection episode, I was put on steroids permanently. I started gaining weight. I had the famous moon face. My cholesterol was sky high. My self-esteem began to take a hit. I had a very candid conversation with my nephrologist. He said, if I didn't change my diet, I would die. I asked him what he would suggest. He said a plant-based diet. That's all I needed to hear. I walked out of that office never eating meat again. It's not like I never saw a dietitian during my journey. I chose, like many others, to ignore what they said, or I thought I was young and it didn't matter, but my choices had caught up to me. I had never done it before because it sounded like a crazy thing to do. At first, I didn't know what I was supposed to eat, so I did a ton of research. I treated it like I would be deciding on any form of treatment. After 3 months, I lost 40 pounds. I had a ton of energy to exercise, and most importantly, my cholesterol went down to normal. I have been eating plant-based food for 14 years. I still have my indulgences, but I make sure it is a treat and not a normal everyday way to eat. Through the years, I have been in and out of the hospital to be treated for various viruses and continued complications with rejection episodes. About 5 years ago, I started to have extreme pain over my kidney. The pain was so severe, I had to take time off work again. Biopsy showed I was experiencing antibody-mediated rejection. I once again needed plasmapheresis and IVIG treatments, but this time it did not work. We continued to try various other medications, rituximab, tocilizumab, and several other MAB medications. Nothing worked. So we tried some more plasmapheresis and long-term IVIG treatments. Eventually, my job had to let me go. They could not save my position with my constant health issues. I was devastated. I felt so defeated that life took me down once again. I filled my days with spending as much time as I could with my nieces and nephews. In 2018, my body started to become extremely fatigued. At first, I thought it was just my monthly cycle. I have always experienced severe symptoms. Gynecologists always blame lupus. One morning, I was on my way to get labs, which I had put off an extra week because I was not feeling well. I'm a very stubborn person, and I always try to do everything on my own, probably because I'm a Capricorn. I was driving myself to clinic for labs, and I pulled over and uncontrollably started vomiting until my body had nothing left. I continued to make my way to the clinic. I walked in. Everyone was staring at me. My entire body was in extreme pain. I didn't know what to do. So I did what anyone would do and returned to my car. I did not feel like sitting in the clinic waiting for an appointment. I just wanted to curl up in a ball. I was crying. I was in so much pain. I started to drive home and I had a very strong urge that I needed to go to the ER, but I was still convincing myself it was my menstrual cycle causing an issue. I did not want to go to the ER just to find out it was just that. I said to myself, if there was a car in the lane next to me, I will go home. If there wasn't, I would go to the ER. There was no car. As I walked into the ER, 3 nurses ran over to me from the desk and caught me as I passed out from the pain in the doorway. I was on some strong pain medications as the doctor ran tests. That is when I realized I could not pee. Less than an hour later, the ER doc ran into my room asking where all my blood went. My hemoglobin was at 5. My kidney stopped working. I was then transferred to the transplant hospital. I continued to receive a lot of blood transfusions. After 2 weeks of being in the hospital, my hospital room was filled with every doctor's specialty there was. I still had no answers, but I suddenly got better. I continued to receive blood transfusions every 2 weeks. I knew each one was a huge risk. A blood transfusion was ordered only once my hemoglobin was at 7. My body would feel completely worn out at 8, but I had to wait another week for it to get down to 7 for a blood transfusion. I went to every hematologist I could find to help me find out what was wrong. I only received shoulder shrugs. My nephrologist was sending me to yet another blood transfusion, and I stood in his office crying. I told him I couldn't do this anymore. He got on the phone at that moment with one of the transplant doctors. They went over every symptom and every test I had already done. Together, they figured out it must be Parvo B19. Sure enough, a test confirmed it. Parvo B19 is a very common virus in children. Usually it presents itself as a cold, and you become immune to it. It is also called slap cheek disease. The infectious disease doctor thought I was one of the very few people that did not get it as a child, but got it as a compromised adult, causing severe symptoms. My choices of treatment were to lower my anti-rejection medications, possibly lose a kidney, or try high doses of IVIG. I've always prided myself in partnering with my doctors, but making my own health decisions regarding my health. I chose IVIG. And I also found a doctor willing to do a hysterectomy to try to lessen the loss of blood. After 5 years of IVIG and bone marrow biopsies, the parvo is finally gone. I now struggle with an antibody issue. I'm a highly sensitized patient from a failed pregnancy and years of blood transfusions. I will be a difficult patient to match for a new kidney. I wanted to buy more time in hopes new therapies would come out to help the antibody issues. So I continued to do monthly IVIG infusions along with belatacept to try to let my kidney hold on a little longer. I was never very vocal about my transplant journey until about 2 years ago. I tried hard to be normal and blend. I started posting some struggles on social media. That is when other transplant patients started to connect with me and ask questions. I suddenly found a purpose for my transplant. My inbox was filled with new friends asking for advice on how to navigate through this journey. That is how I became a community manager with Transplant Life. I help create content for transplant patients, including an amazing podcast every week. I also started to volunteer with Remend, a peer-to-peer mentoring program for CKD patients. I also am an UNOS ambassador and National Kidney Foundation advocate. From these wonderful new adventures, I have not only met my two incredible mentors, Karin and Kiku, I have met some of the most inspiring people I have ever met in my whole life. My life is now so full of love and inspiration every day. I could not ask for anything more. My transplant friend, Alicia, teaches me it's okay to cry. Lavis teaches me to never give up. Taryn reminds me to laugh. Alex reminds me to push through those hard days. I wish I could stand here all day and tell you what each transplant recipient means to me. March 2023, my GFR declined to 15. I again felt my life come crashing down. I had been dreaming since I was 13 to take a trip to Italy. The doctors all said, you better go now, because the wait in Southern California is 9 years. September 2023, I was listed on the national waiting list as inactive. I would become active the moment I start dialysis, but this would allow me to accrue time. My transplant friend, who is a pilot, helped me along with my doctors to plan to make sure I was prepared with medications and plans if I did get sick while abroad. October 2023, I flew into Milan and had one of the best experiences of my life. I started the trip thinking this was my last hurrah, the end of Jeanmarie. I knew I could not face years of dialysis. I was standing in Venice, Murano to be exact, and I was enjoying a lemon basil gelato while listening to all the church bells. At that moment, I realized it was not the end. I was just approaching a new beginning. I will go back home and I will fight just like I have done because life is worth it. I still find strength and inspiration from my nieces and nephews every day. My 13-year-old nephew one day was holding onto my arm and I said, wow, you seem so happy. He said, because I'm here with you. My 9-year-old niece said, can you please go on a family vacation with us? It's a reminder they still need me here in their lives. Every day I'm inspired by all my transplant friends to continue to help one another with the transplant process. It has taken me over 20 years to learn that my chronic illness and transplant are not burdens. It's just who I am. It has helped me love and appreciate and be grateful for every single moment that I am given in this life. I am determined to hold each and every person's hand until they find their footing too. As I continue to make slow progress in my 9-year wait for an organ, I continue to advocate for myself and learn to ask as many questions that I can about my options as I wait. People ask me all the time, how do you get through all this? Well, one day at a time, and sometimes just 1 hour at a time. Since I grew up around boats and the ocean, since I started this journey at 16, about 30 years ago, I have always pictured myself sitting in a little sailboat. All I have is my sail to help me through, which is my friends and my family. Sometimes the sea and life are calm, and sometimes the sea is cruel and treacherous, but I just keep sailing along, never give up. Thank you.